Dear friends, after having worked very hard this morning and after having deserved a lunch, we have to continue with our second session, which is focused on a credible European perspective for the Western Balkans countries. I am very happy that we have succeeded in getting very competent keynote speakers, and I'm convinced that we will have a nice discussion, a nice debate after having heard our three keynote speakers. The first one is going to be Mr. Tonino Picula, who was also Croatia's foreign minister from 2000 until 2003, and who has been a member of the European Parliament now for 6 years, 7 years, almost 7 years, am I right? 7 years. He's a member of the Social Democratic Party of Croatia, and we are very happy to have him today as our keynote speaker. Afterwards, we're going to hear Ms. Jelena Zovko, who is also a member of the European Parliament. She's a member of HDZ from Bosnia and Herzegovina, so of a partner party of EPP in Bosnia and Herzegovina and a partner party of my political party. And then we will have a second lady, Mrs. Genoveva Ruiz Calavera, who is the director for the Western Balkans in the European Commission's Directorate General NIA. So Tonino, we will be happy to hear your exposé. Please.
Dear Miro, thank you for introductory remarks. Esteemed panelists, colleagues and friends from all over the European Union. It took so long before Croatian language becomes one of the official languages in the European Union, and I think that's naturally to address you here in Croatia using my native language. Dobar dan svima.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to take part in this panel. And I also want to say that I am delighted that this conference is being held for the first time here in Zagreb in Croatia. I am today wearing several hats, not only as an MEP from Croatia, but also as a rapporteur of the European Parliament. I am in charge of the recommendations for the Zagreb Summit. I'm also a rapporteur for Montenegro. I'm the head of the EP working group for the Western Balkans, and I am a co-rapporteur for the financial instrument IPA3. So the topic of this discussion is something I know well, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share my views with you and to hear your proposals. When it comes to the credible strategy for the enlargement policy, I want to emphasize how important this process is, because throughout history, the enlargement policy has enriched the European Union. Each new enlargement was a motivation for the Union to implement reforms and to reinforce common action in numerous areas. This process surpassed the initial idea of economic unification of 6 countries after World War II. In order to have a credible enlargement process, it definitely needs to yield results as early as this month at the council meeting, i.e., this means that negotiations should be opened with Albania and Northern Macedonia. Blocking the decision in October put our credibility into question. And this is not only related to these 2 countries, because we have to ask ourselves how we're going to motivate other countries to implement reforms if we are not willing to acknowledge complex historic reforms, such as a country changing its name. We should also not forget the country of Kosovo and the issue of visa liberalization. Even though they have met conditions a long time ago, they're still in the waiting room. As a co-rapporteur for the pre-accession assistance instrument called IPA3, I also want to emphasize the financial dimension of the enlargement policy. We have a new generation of the IPA3 instrument, and this tool needs to be based on political priorities which have a direct impact on citizens' lives. Pre-accession funds need to be allocated transparently, proportionately, and in a non-discriminatory manner. Also, we want to establish a better instrument which will enable adequate and just pre-accession financing. Financing that is in line with the needs of beneficiaries, and financing that will help beneficiaries meet their obligations and join the EU. Initially, the Commission proposed an amount of 13 billion euro in current prices and an overall amount of 14.5 billion euro. The problem occurred with the last proposal by the Council, which proposed a decrease in the amount. I hope that the Croatian presidency will put in the effort and try to preserve the originally proposed amount. Because we want to avoid any cuts in the financing of IPA3, any cuts that could slow down the reforms and endanger the Union's strategic influence in the region. There is a new methodology of enlargement, which is a welcome move by the Commission. However, I think this topic requires further discussion. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, High Representative Josep Borrell, and Commissioner Oliver Varhelyi have said that the new Commission, the new European Commission, is going to be geopolitical. And the best way to prove their intentions is to act in the EU's immediate neighborhood. An improved methodology should aim at offering a fully fledged membership in the European Union. This means that the rules need to be strict and clear, and they need to be fully implemented. At the same time, the accession process needs to strengthen the values of the Union. It needs to foster democratic and economic transformation, as well as territorial and social convergence. The EU internal reform and the EU enlargement process need to be parallel processes and complementary processes. We need to better align the enlargement process with the political events in the EU, and internal political conditions in member states should not be used as a reason to block the enlargement process. I believe that the Commission has put forward some useful propositions, for example, to organize chapters into clusters, and for these clusters to be negotiated together. I believe that we also need to provide targeted financial support, which will result in concrete benefits for citizens and will increase the assistance given by the European Union in other countries. We also need to work on the implementation of the digital agenda for the Western Balkans and on establishing a roaming-free zone. In general, each and every country needs to be assessed on its own merits, and we need to improve the way we measure the results they have achieved. The two countries that are currently negotiating need to decide if they want and how they want to implement the new methodology. Democracy and the rule of law need to be priorities for the enlargement process. All the chapters pertaining to justice, corruption, and organized crime need to be open first and closed last. I also call upon the Western Balkan countries to be included in the Conference on the Future of Europe, because a dialogue on our common future and the process of enlargement can only make the European Union more credible. Finally, I will touch upon the parliamentary dimension of the enlargement process. The European Parliament needs to take on a larger role in the enlargement process, because it is fully dedicated to strengthening democracy in the region, and it wants to provide candidate countries with more help and assistance. The Parliament can help to overcome political polarization and to increase parliamentary scrutiny. In my recommendations as a rapporteur, I have given a recommendation to have MPs from candidate countries take part in the work of the European Parliament. I believe that the European Parliament needs to be consulted more when it comes to issues such as suspending negotiations and reversing the enlargement process. I hope that the summit to be held here in Zagreb in 2 months will use the power of dialogue in order to confirm the platform for sustainable investment in the Western Balkans. This would be a message of having a political support to the enlargement process. It would strengthen its prospects in the future and ensure its credibility.
So much, hvala lijepa, Tonino. And now we are turning to our friend Željana Zovko. Željana, izvoli.
Right, thank you, Miro, and ladies and gentlemen. I have my speech prepared, and as the chairman, Miro Kovac, has introduced me previously. I'm a special case of MEP because I'm a Croat who is originally from Bosnia and Herzegovina and have a personal experience talking about enlargement issues. I live in Split, and I'm also a member of HDZ of Croatia, so we are participating actively in political scene of Croatia and its vibrant politics regarding the enlargement. And as our institutional memory is always the best guidance in creating the new policies, I'm going to tell you my personal experience why what we are doing here and what we are doing in European Parliament is helping, giving a hope and helping a peace and stabilities on the borders of European Union. I just spoke to my Greek colleague whose country is facing the most worrisome crisis in the recent years. Since 2015, we haven't had this migration crisis and this peace and stability crisis as in such a scale. Last week, we went with Foreign Affairs Committee to Turkey. We visited Turkish officials, and we went to Syrian border to see from a first-hand experience what is going on and how European Union is helping Turkish government, Turkish people to cope with enormous numbers of refugees and migrants, and how to more efficiently be in contact with the Turkish population as well as with the population of these poor people who are facing uncertain future. I was a refugee during the war in former Yugoslavia 20 years ago, and I was a refugee in London, the country that now left European Union and is a third country for us at this moment, unfortunately. But has also some specific case in its history, because during the 90s, when I came to London and when I came to Britain, most of my time when I was a student there, I got quite used to the alerts of the bomb being put around the tube, London Metro station, because the peace agreement between in Northern Ireland was not made then. So we have, fortunately, we have Good Friday Agreement that was made and that made a peace in Europe, in Great Britain, and brought this real sense of well-being that the European Union is founded on. 20 years ago, we had a Zagreb summit here organized by, on the initiative of Croatian and the French presidency. At that time, a French president was the late President Chirac, who had a great vision to give a chance to all this region to join European Union, because he saw at that moment, he had a vision, and he saw that without European Union, this unstable area will always be prone for the conflicts and instabilities. So welcome to Croatia, welcome to biggest frontier country. I live in Split, and I know how important peace and stability is for Dalmatia, because Dalmatia is the most beautiful coast, and we don't need the troubles in the future. We are sharing 1,300 kilometers border with Bosnia and Herzegovina, very unstable country that was made on another peace agreement, that's the Dayton-Paris peace agreement, and it's, as actual President Macron have said, is a ticking bomb at on the border with the European Union. So you are gathered here to talk about peace and stability, to talk about common foreign and security policies, but we don't have one voice still. And this is something that we always agree in European Parliament. The most problematic thing among us is that everybody is speaking with their own interests and with the interest of their own country. But once you go through the war, you understand that in the times of a big instabilities, of the huge menace, such as this one that we are facing with this migration crisis, we have to look for this voice. We have to look for the joint position in our common foreign and security policy, and we have to find the solutions. We cannot defend ourselves each and with their own policies, and this is something that from experience Croatians could tell you. And Croats are the most experienced because they are the last one that went through the war. And it's the last country that entered into European Union, and it has great knowledge about how peace is valuable. And therefore, we are organizing, this country is organizing 20 years after Zagreb summit, the new Zagreb summit, that together with your leaders should give a new impetus to the enlargement. I will thank my colleague here Genevieve, who is working hard in the Commission in order to make a credible arguments why North Macedonia and Albania merit to have this their candidacy open, negotiations open, and why all this area, why this region is deserves this chance to continue this transformative process that has started 20 years ago. Croatia is the last one. I mean, since the Zagreb summit, we have only 2 countries that enter European Union, and you can see, you can witness what it had, what effects it had on its society. Entering European Union for the other countries that are aspiring to become members will not happen tomorrow. Will probably not happen in the next 10 years. But the transformation process for its society is incredible. It deserves a historical chance that can be given only by the members of the parliament members who are more courageous to give these positive signals. I will use this opportunity as well to address my Dutch colleagues who are here, to do the narrative that we are expecting from them, and as well from all the countries in European Union, to explain to their public and to their constituents that enlargement is primarily in the interest of your own citizens. Because enlargement means protection. Enlargement above everything means peace and security. Enlargement means finishing with this black hole in the heart of Europe, when you, in all this period, when there was no attention, it was allowed all these foreign actors, all these third countries, to come and to look for the fertile land for their own interests. So what we have missed in the last period, in the last 10 years, or since Thessaloniki summit, and what I myself have witnessed in all these years that have gone by, are the people of great vision and great courage in politics. We are in the new era of digital media, that no one is listening to you anymore. Everybody is more interested in how their picture or their soundbite will appear and how many followers they will get. But there are few people that are really interested, that they have a vision and they have interest in what is the future for European Union and what legacy they can leave for the generations to come. So I was fortunate enough to have met all these people 20 years ago who had the courage, and in a great time when you had like 400,000 soldiers actually in Bosnia and Herzegovina that fought through a really terrible war, war that had left 100,000 dead people, millions of refugees. They had a vision to offer the enlargement policy in order to get to reduce the arms, to change the army into just to dismiss them and to send them to their workplaces, and to start this peace and reconciliation process that resulted in a positive images, although they are not so much appreciated by the public in some of the capitals where we are discussing the future of this enlargement. So, as my colleague Tonino Picula has said, and as we are all agreeing that every country at least has to have its common approach to the foreign policies, and therefore Tonino and I at least are agreeing on something, that it's in interest of Croatia as a co-rapporteurs for IPA 3 pre-assistance funds, that for every peace and security of Croatia, of the utmost importance is to move the borders more and more to the east, and to finish off this process that has started in 1999 with the Stability Pact in Sarajevo, and it was shaped in Zagreb, in the Zagreb summit. I see you as followers, and I see you as one of those people who will have at least the courage to shape European foreign policy, European foreign and security policy, and who will also find out that Europe, as it is a global payer, as we like to say in European Parliament. In the last legislature, I was a member of Development Committee, and I found out that we are financing at least 40% of funds in UN are paid by European Union. Most of development aid, wherever I went to, from Africa to Asia, I have seen European money, but I have not seen European voice. I think what we need now is a new narrative. I think what we need now is a new European voice, but a strong voice, not a selfish voice that will take care of the future of only European interest, because in this global world that everybody else is taking care of their own interest, what we need above all is European interest, but European interest is the interest that is the only moral, has only moral values in this turbulent world, because seeing all these migration waves, wherever I was visiting, from Sahel to Nepal, and from all the borders with Lebanon and Syria and even Turkey, I think in this global world, the only thing that we can still be proud of is that only these poor people are looking for the promised land in European Union. So what we have not lost is at least this positive image that we have projected in our world. Thank you very much.
And now we are moving to the Genovieva, please.
For passing me the floor. I work in the European Commission, which is the institution that is responsible to help countries to prepare for accession and to propose our EU member states on the different steps that the countries have to follow in order to become EU member states. Because becoming a EU member state is a process that is enshrined in our treaties, it's Article 49, and that is an intergovernmental process. It's a process in which the Commission recommends, the Commission supports the countries to be very ready, but it's the decision by unanimity of our EU member states on how the countries progress. So this panel is extremely timely right now. It is a very good moment to look into the state of play and to look under the concept that we have a new Commission that has started work in December 2019, and is extremely committed to the European perspective of this region. And we have an European Parliament that has always been the best ally of the Commission in this vision. We are totally convinced that the perspective of membership for this region, like Mrs. Sofko said, it is in the Union's very strategic interest, whether you look at it from a security perspective, because we are talking in CFSP terms, you look at it from an economic perspective, because if you look at the region in the middle of the European Union, it is in our economic interest to make it properly linked to the European Union, or of course in the context of our democracy, stability and prosperity. So investing in this region is investing in the EU a strong future. And that's why we are very keen to reinvigorate the process that have suffered from a particular context last year in which our member states were not ready to open negotiations with two countries. And that has clearly paid a toll on the credibility of the policy. And the European Commission is looking into three different strands of work, addressing the root causes of that lack of credibility. The first one was that our member states had, some of them at least, had concerns that the methodology we were using to move forward in our negotiations was not giving the necessary results in terms of the transformation we want to see on the countries in getting closer to the European Union. So that was an issue of methodology. The second issue was, of course, the assessment of the countries that we aim to have the negotiation opening, which raised some concerns of some of our member states. And the third issue is, of course, our own internal shape and form, like has been mentioned, that the European Union is not just a static institution. We keep changing every day depending on the international world around us and the different challenges ahead of us. As we speak, we have a challenge which is global, like the coronavirus. We have the challenge that we see right now in the borders with Greece and Bulgaria. And all these challenges affect our relationship in the EU and globally in the world. So let me go, how are we going about tackling these different challenges? The first one is methodology. I mean, methodologies are just there to support processes. And for us in the European Commission, we're constantly looking how can we make our methodologies fit for purpose. The purpose is clear, it's preparing countries for accession. The goal is accession, it's nothing else. And that's the goal that is established in our treaties, and the European Commission is the guardian of the European treaties. So we have taken that challenge, we have looked into the accession methodology, we have reviewed it. And we have reviewed it in a way to make it more credible, to make it more predictable, to make it more dynamic, and to make it much more strongly guided by the giving political steer, as well by our EU member states, and of course, by the EU institutions. So basically, let me be clear, the paper we put on the table on the 5th of February doesn't change the ultimate destination, just strengthen the process, just strengthen the tools at our disposal to help the countries of the region prepare for membership. But the goal remains the same. The goal remains accession to the European Union. This paper was tabled by the European Commission on 5th of February, and I have to tell you that it has received quite a warm welcome by our EU member states. In the discussions we have had with the political, the COREPER, and all, the paper is well received. And I think this is a very good basis for the second strand of work we have right now. Enlargement is a merit-based process. So we have been very clear from the Commission side that one thing is to revise the methodologies, which we have done and put on the table, and one thing is to assess the countries. The countries are not assessed on the basis of methodologies. They are assessed on the basis of efforts they are doing to fulfill the EU criteria. And that's why yesterday, before I took the plane to come here, the European Commission tabled again 2 reports giving information of how much Albania and North Macedonia have done since last year, when the Council couldn't agree on opening negotiations. Those papers were tabled yesterday. Tomorrow there will be the first discussion with our member state, again in a COREPER framework. And I think it's very important to say that when we prepare these papers are as well for our own member states, and I think you in your parliaments have a lot to do with these papers. These papers are done as well to give, is particular to the member states that need to go and consult their parliaments, another basis for this discussion. So exactly like Mrs. Ofko said, I think this is a good opportunity for all of you to go back in your national parliaments, to read these papers and to promote what we want to do, which is opening negotiations. I think these papers are factual. They really show that despite the frustration that it was last year for the 2 countries to be confronted twice, in June and in October, with incapacity of the EU member states to decide on opening because there was no consensus, these countries have not lost focus on continuing reforms and continuing implementing the recommendations that were given by the Council to be able to open accession. So we have a methodology. We have 2 papers that really restate the Commission conviction that the countries are ready for opening accession negotiations. And we are hoping that there will be a discussion in the Council. The Council decided to revert back to this opening of accessions before the next Zagreb summit. Zagreb summit is beginning of May, so there's 2 opportunities. It's end of March and end of April, where we have councils. So I personally hope that we will have these discussions sooner, the sooner the better, that those discussions will give the mandate to the Commission to prepare negotiations frameworks for North Macedonia and for Albania on the basis of the revised methodology. So we are really this is a crossing point moment. I think the credibility of the EU very much depends on that decision. That decision that, of course, affects first and foremost Albania and North Macedonia. Their citizens are waiting for this decision, but not only, affects the whole region and affects the EU. Because as the members of the parliament said, if the EU wants to be a credible interlocutor in the international scene, in the global scene, it needs to be able to demonstrate that we can lead, we can show our leadership in a region which is inside the European Union. We cannot be expected to be respected as an international actor abroad if we are not able to exercise this leadership inside our, geographic strategic space. So we have this second strand right now. I'm very proud that my services prepared those reports. I really hope that those reports will give the comfort that you in the national parliaments have to give a very clear mandate to your governments to come to the Council and to give a clear mandate to the European Commission to open negotiations. And there's a 3rd strand of work, which is we want to contribute to a very successful summit in Zagreb, the leaders of the European Union will be meeting with the leaders of the Western Balkans under the auspices of the Croatia presidency in May. The European Commission will prepare a contribution to that summit. We want to bring a substantive amount of investment to the region, and we want this will be a Commission communication in this sense, and that's why I think both of our members of parliament here have a very important role to play, being the rapporteurs on the instrument for pre-accession 3, that's the third generation of the instrument, because this is the instrument that will give us the funding that we need to invest in the region. So and we will need your help as well, in your national capacities, in your national parliaments, to make a very clear plea that a region that needs to prepare for accession, that is a very demanding task, needs to be assisted by the European Union, needs our financial support, not only our political engagement, and that financial support has to come in the form of a substantive package for the region in the next discussions of the multi-annual financial perspectives. A last message, but not least, and this is a message addressed to the region. I'm extremely convinced, I'm cautiously, but I'm optimistic, that we will have a mandate for opening negotiations with Albania and North Macedonia. This is a big responsibility, but this is a big opportunity for the region. It will be something that will encourage all the countries in the region to continue investing in reforms, to continue delivering reforms that are the citizens of these countries that are asking. They're asking for democracy, they're asking for rule of law, they're asking for better prosperity, conditions for the citizens to stay, to have a future in the region. And every reform that aligns the countries towards the European Union gives responses to those needs. For Zagreb, as part of what the Commission wants to bring to the table is really a vision that brings the region totally linked to the European Union priorities. And we have 6 priorities for the von der Leyen Commission that were the priorities that the Parliament accepted as the work plan for the European Union in the next 5 years. Is an economy that works for all. That's why we want to bring an economic package to Zagreb. It is a digital agenda. That's why we're working with the region to connect to the digital agenda. It is a EU Green Deal. That's why we want to bring Zagreb a Green Deal for the Western Balkans that is inspired on the EU. It is, of course, a EU that respects our way of life. And the Western Balkans are partners into that, helping us manage migration, helping us working on security dimensions. It is a EU that plays a role in the world, and that means that we are counting on our Western Balkan partners to continue aligning to our CFSP and positions around the world. They are going to be future member states. They have to start aligning from now. And it's certainly a EU that respects democracy. In that respect, I'm very happy that the European Parliament wants to associate the Western Balkans into the vision of the EU for the future. And in this respect, a very important message for the region, this is not just a bilateral relation between us and each of you individually. This is a multilateral relation. You, as a region, have a responsibility to work together. The more the region works together, the more the region will advance towards the European Union. And I'm very glad that we have here, for instance, representatives of the Regional Cooperation Council that is helping the region to move in that direction. Last but not least, certainly, this is an intergovernmental process. It's our member states that have the last say. But I'm totally convinced that the EU national parliaments have a very important role to play in giving orientation to those parliaments. The same that the European Parliament has a very important role to play in giving us scrutiny in the European Commission, in supporting the European Commission initiatives in the region, and the same that we together have a very important opportunity of the parliaments, because every single partner in this region has signed a stabilization and association agreement with the European Union. And under those agreements, you have parliamentary committees in which the parliaments of the region meet with the European Parliament. And this is a resource that I am convinced we have to use much more in moving the European agenda of the countries in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, gracias, Genoveva. We have had 3 very nice exposés, interventions, and I'm now looking forward to hearing your questions. We have had thus far 10 requests. The first one is our friend from North Macedonia, Hari Lokvenec. Hari, the floor is yours.
Na hrvatskom. Dobar dan svima.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, colleagues, for a wonderful organization of the conference.
Miss Zovko, Miss Calavera, distinguished national MPs and MEPs, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to be a part of the Interparliamentary Conference for the Common Foreign and Security Policy of the Member States of the European Union. Especially in these extremely important times for my country, in light of the crucial decisions we expect from the European Union in the coming period. Over the past 2.5 years, the Republic of North Macedonia has faced many challenges, made difficult but courageous decisions, closed all open issues with its neighbors. We have achieved a lot in a short time, guided by the thought that only in this way can we build a stable and prosperous state. But the additional motivation for us was surely the hope that with the real progress we made and the resolution of these key issues, we would pave the way to the European family. Getting a date for opening negotiations with the European Union will be a strong impetus for us to continue implementing the reforms in all areas and fostering the European values at an even faster pace. In particular, I strongly believe that EU membership negotiations are the best mechanism for implementation of European standards, and the use of the modern state model is key to our internal progress aimed at ensuring a better quality of life for our citizens. EU accession is the only viable and secure strategic option for the Western Balkan countries. It is precisely for this reason that I, as chairman of the Committee for Defense and Security in the Assembly of the Republic of North Macedonia, but also as a person, have confidence that European leaders will rectify, as they have said, the historical mistake and make a decision which for my country would mean both recognition for what was being done and a motivation to forge ahead with strong steps. The new enlargement methodology presented last month by EU Commissioner Oliver Varhey provides real and predictable criteria which are essential to the Western Balkan countries. The new methodology gives greater political dimension to the process, but also greater dynamics, predictability, and credibility. We as a state welcome this approach because it is in our interest, both at home and before the EU, to demonstrate real, sound reforms that will guarantee democracy, the rule of law, prosperity, and development. Dear friends, I am firmly convinced that the enlargement, or shall I say, the consolidation of the European Union will be beneficial to the Western Balkans as well as to the member state of the European Union. A united Europe means a stronger Europe, We as a state and as a parliament are open to cooperation because to us, your experience is invaluable. At the end of my speech, I remain to urge you to support us in our effort to obtain a date for the start of EU accession negotiation, seeing that March 26th EU Council may have decisive significance in this regard. Hvala vam puno.
Thank you so much, Harry. I've just had a consultation with Tonino. He's from the Social Democrats, and we have a consensus in Croatia. We will support you. Thank you so much. So now we're moving, dear Harry, to the Netherlands, to Sven Koopmans. Please, alsjeblieft. Alsjeblieft.
Dank u. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this very interesting discussion. Now, I only take the floor despite the fact that my compatriot already spoke this morning about enlargement issues, because the Netherlands was singled out particularly by Mrs. Zofko. But my colleague, who is from a very different political party in the Netherlands, expressed a broadly held view in the Netherlands, namely that yes, from our side we look forward to EU integration of North Macedonia and Albania, but we also want to maintain the conditions that are already there. And we're not alone as the Netherlands. There were many other countries, I think, that held the same view. And perhaps this is then also something that I should say to some, in a broader perspective, because one of the concerns, of course, that we all have is the support that these particular countries need in their development of the rule of law and other reforms. And they're doing wonderful things. But it is wrong to say that promises have been made, as I heard also, that are not kept. No, the standards are there, and we just all need to agree that those standards are met. And then it is worrying that we see other countries, also in the EU, backsliding on issues of the rule of law, and that creates serious concerns. And for that reason, we want, and the Netherlands is certainly not alone, we want just to maintain those standards, but at the same time, and also say this as someone who's actually lived in the Western Balkans, where I got to work with Ms. Genoveva, who is sitting over there. We all look forward to that European future, but we also want to make sure that we are all in the same boat together on the same basis. That is just what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sven. Thank you so much. Thank you, Will. Any comments? Tonino, Jelena?
Right. Thank you so much for saying what you have said, and I think that we are on the same path and on the same way. Why I mentioned specifically Netherlands is because of the strength that your parliament has on the decision, and I do highly appreciate the parliamentarian influence on all these decisions. And this was the perfect stage to exchange the opinion, what it matters for all of us. And above all is the rule of law. And my argument was that this process is a transformative process that brought peace and reconciliation and brought to Croatia as well the state of rule of law of Slovenia. So it's the process that is important and the hope is important. And leaving this process and giving it push ahead is very important. And it's up to us politicians to recognize the momentum and not to close the door. Thank you. And thank you for your remarks.
Tonino?
I just feel inspired, dear colleague, with what you just have said. Of course, it's always good to be a little bit skeptical towards some processes because European Union today is something very complex. It's a sui generis organization, of course, unprecedented in European history. And of course, we need to be in a way suspicious. We need to talk, to question processes, and we need to find out what might be consequences of our political actions. I'm talking about European Union. But I'm glad that you're coming from the Netherlands, you know. It's a, let's say, interesting picture. In the beginning of the European Union, there were 6 countries. Benelux countries, yes, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, France and Italy. And now we are talking about another 6 countries. Western Balkans, 6. So I think thanks to efforts invested in the Netherlands and the rest of 5 countries 60 years ago, today we got European Union. And I think the 6 countries we are debating today also deserves European future. Of course, they need to meet the criterion standards in a way, but I think they deserve and they need their citizens need to plan their European perspective in a way. So we need to help them following the experience, of course, and all what we did as a European Union in the last 6-7 decades. And the direct answer on your question, I believe, of course, that European Union enlargement will be less and less mechanical, but it was never mechanical, and it will be more and more substantial. So we are talking about a substance, and I believe that we can only enhance that methodology of enlargement, and of course we may remain in a way skeptical, but we need to get a chance to process to enhance European Union as such, following excellent examples from the past.
Thank you so much. Now we're moving to the Czech Republic, to Pavel Fischer.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for this very interesting panel. We are very much concerned because the credibility of the EU is at stake, as you have said, and the regional impact in the region, which is inside, I very much like the expression of the European space, is really at stake as well. We are ready to give the very firm mandate to our government to push forward this agenda as you proposed. So here we are. We appreciate that the Croatian presidency put the Western Balkan issue and its integration in the EU as one of the main priorities of the Croatian presidency. Many thanks, Mr. Chair. In order to reach a consensus on this decision, we are ready to engage constructively in an effort to enhance the effectiveness of the accession process. We look forward to have the proposal, and we are ready to help you. In the light of the fact that the EU accession process is blocked now, we are very much concerned about other crucial processes in the region, such as Serbia-Kosovo dialogue and the efforts to deal with the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as Željana Zovko spoke about. Should the prospect of EU membership be taken off the table, no country would be motivated to undertake difficult reforms and make compromises both domestically and in relation to neighboring states that are necessary for moving the region forward. The normalization of relations between Serbia and Kosovo is a key for regional stability. The dialogue between the two sides needs to be restarted as soon as possible. We agree that in order to bring both sides back to the negotiation table, Kosovo needs to abolish the taxes on Serbia import, while Serbia needs to stop its aggressive campaign for the de-recognition of Kosovo. We expect that the new EU High Representative to be personally engaged in the Serbia-Kosovo dialogue. We hope so. The EU has to do much more in mediation than in the past couple of years. And as far as Bosnia and Herzegovina is concerned, it has been plagued by serious problems. The recurring crises are related to the very functioning of the state and the way politics are done in the country. The ethnic divisions are being constantly reinforced and the fabric of the common state diluted. It is positive that the European Commission opinion of Bosnia's EU membership application is candid about what the country needs to do in order to be able to start negotiations. It is clear that Bosnia and Herzegovina will have to change fundamentally, and the real question is whether the leaders, the political leaders, will be there and not only there, but also in member states. Now, I have a final question to the Croatian presidency and maybe also to Genova Ruiz Calavera. In a debate that you see ongoing, what is, in your opinion, is possible that, and is it realistic that during the Croatian presidency, Bosnia and Herzegovina EU membership application is debated and open and confirmed? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pavel. So perhaps first, Genoveva.
Thank you very much for these reflections, which of course are important reflections. We agree that it is important first it's important that the countries are looked, let me go back to North Macedonia, Albania, that are looked on the basis of their own merits, and they are compared with what the Council has asked them to do. And the Council gave to these two countries a very clear set of conditions that are necessary to open. And they did progress on those conditions. And in June, we had, according to our assessment, already met them sufficiently. These are conditions to open, not to close and become member states. Then we couldn't get the agreement in October, but the countries continue working from June to October. And despite the fact that the second time they couldn't get this agreement, it was disappointing, they have continued working into those conditions. So I would really plead for everybody to look at the countries, not thinking that these are the conditions to join the European Union. These are the conditions to open negotiations, which is a different stage of the process, but it's a very important stage of the process because the credibility of the process really is based on the fact that the EU will deliver when the countries deliver on the reforms. And I think we have to look into the reports we have put on the table and assess those reforms that have been delivered, despite the emotional setbacks that have been for the countries. They have remained focused on delivering. And it's very important for the rest, because it's true that the efforts we have seen in North Macedonia in solving all their bilateral difficulties are unprecedented in this region. And if we don't recognize them, we will be making a big mistake that will not create the conditions for other important issues that need to be resolved in this. But let me be very clear. The Commission look at the countries on the basis of merits, real merits, in getting closer to meeting the European criteria. This is the Copenhagen criteria, and where rule of law is a fundamental part of that criteria. And we have more traction every time we see that we can work with the countries in helping them get to the European Union. So that's one thing. The second thing is certainly we believe that the whole region is in different stages of progress. We believe it's the moment to opening for North Macedonia and Albania, and we believe this will be very, very positive for the rest of the region, to really be encouraged that we are creating a space for moving forward. In the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, we already discussed Bosnia and Herzegovina in December in the Council, and the Council endorsed the Commission opinion on Bosnia and Herzegovina membership and endorsed the 14 points that are in that membership as the roadmap for Bosnia and Herzegovina. You see the situation today is not conducive, so we want to see progress in those roadmaps in order to be putting back the discussion in the Council. On the case of the dialogue, is certainly a very important part of what the region needs to do. It's very important, certainly, for the future of Serbia and Kosovo's European perspective. It's very important not only for both of them to normalize the relationship, but for the whole region, because the lack of normalization affects the region and affects, of course, the stability of the European Union. But it's as well very important because it does create a very important message to the region, that is only through cooperation and not through confrontation. Because if we are honest, I mean, what is the European Union? It's a regional model in which our member states sit every day to agree what is better for the EU. So we need to have that sort of work, modus vivendi inside the region, to give comfort that the region is ready to come to the European Union. And the last message I want to say, HRPP has committed to take, a leading role into the region. He's certainly looking as well for support by U.S. Special Representatives. This will be discussed very soon in the Council, but he has committed to maintain, a very direct involvement, and I think this is the right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. No, Jelena?
I think you have asked the right questions, and probably as all Czech diplomacy, you have the right informations and on the spot and what the real problem is. First, I would start from Serbia and Kosovo, and I would say that I'm really pleased to have a special envoy that will facilitate the negotiations and the messages that we are receiving from Kosovo on the reducing the taxes or abolishing the taxes is very encouraging ones. And I've seen that the United States have taken a leading role again in these negotiations between Kosovo and Serb leaders. So as I mentioned, I haven't read my speech because it was with the purpose to provoke as well the questions such as yours. Without the United States of America, we couldn't have had the peace 25 years ago. So this year we are celebrating the Dayton Peace Agreement. And the heavy involvement of American administration in Balkan meant also the peace in Kosovo at the time in 1999 when there was intervention, but also raised different issues on War Crime Tribunal and everything. So until Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Kosovo issue is not resolved, nothing is being resolved in the Balkan. I must remind you that we have 1,100,000 EU citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina. During the war, Croatia has given 1,100,000 passports. 700,000 are Croats, because this is the first citizens and the only citizenship that they had. 350,000 Bosniaks have received the citizenships by Croatia, because before 71 they were named Croats, they declared themselves Croats. So whoever had the Croatian birth certificate or whatever has received the Croatian citizenship. And Croatia is the biggest advocate for Bosnia and Herzegovina because it hosted the largest number of refugees, namely Bosniaks from Bosnia and Herzegovina during the war, and this whole area was full of, all the hotels were full of these refugees that came from the conflict. United States of America got involved in stopping war in Bosnia and Herzegovina at the moment when they saw Bosniaks and Croats losing from the Serb forces. So, and this was mainly before the Bihać fell, after Srebrenica. So in order to avoid the big carnage in Bihać that would repeat the Srebrenica case, America had given green light to Croatian forces to help with Bosniak forces to free this zone. And America was instrumental in making Dayton-Paris peace agreement, but I also have to mention the strong role of French President Chirac, who insisted that this agreement was signed in France. But since then, America probably thought that this one person, one vote, and when you are mentioning on Bosnia and Herzegovina case, it should be like implementation of the recommendation by European Commission or whatever opinion. This is the American way of looking at solving the issues in the region. But European Union is a different thing. European Union and the Balkan as well is all about identity. Identity and of the communities. So until we don't have this fine balance that was shaken 20 years ago by the changes of electoral law in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where we reduced factor from three factors in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the weakest part is a Croat. You reduce them to become second-class citizens in Federation and third-class citizens in Republika Srpska, and you made half of the population leave the country. Until you recognize the identity problem issue by the constituent people, there is no solution for this. So this is something as why I mentioned a Good Friday Peace Agreement. The Good Friday Peace Agreement was made when it was recognized the right for Irish citizens in Northern Ireland to be Irish. And now we are having this Good Friday Agreement being questioned because we have a large number of EU citizens living in a part of Great Britain, and that is Northern Ireland. The same case we have in Bosnia and Herzegovina, with 1,100,000 EU passports. And this is a civic state that maybe we want. But they're Croats, because they have Croatian passports, if you're looking on this line. But if you want to go back to the basis of a Dayton Peace Agreement that brought the peace and stability, then we have to recognize Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks to have their identity, to have their stake in a state, and to have a peaceful Bosnia and Herzegovina. Without international community as a meddling factor, that very often is not on a line of being honest broker. Unfortunately, I have to say that, because they don't understand the nature of the problem. So it takes ages to understand the nature of the issues in Bosnia and Herzegovina, not only 6 months. And you cannot come with your own prejudices and your own experiences. Even I, who is Mostar born, it took me ages to understand the issue. But in order to be respected, you have to respect as well. And I don't think that political leaders are a problem. Political leaders will go as soon as we find a solution for this country. And the most grateful citizens will be the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
So as our friend from Czech Republic also want to hear something from the presidency, meaning Croatia, I'll be very brief. The position of our country is clear. We are a neighboring country. We are also a country which signed the Dayton Peace Accords, so we have a responsibility for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we want the country to be on the track to join the European Union. It's going to be a very hard process. It's going to last quite long, but each country in the Western Balkans has a European perspective. That means also in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And generally speaking, the European Union has to be much more engaged. Because imagine Western Europe after World War II without the engagement of the US. Would we have today a European Union? No. Would we have a enlarged Europe with the Central and Eastern European countries in the European Union without a strong engagement of the European Union? No. So we need to do much more together. We have to help those countries, but of course it is up to the governments of the countries to do their job when it comes to fulfilling the criteria. But basically, we should be aware of the need when it comes to the European Union that it is us who have to be the main factor in ensuring stability and peace on the European continent. It is us. And there will always be competition when it comes to the European continent, but we have the European Union, we are member states of the European Union, and we should be the main power on the European continent. And that means also the main power in the Western Balkans. That should be the way of thinking and the way of acting when it comes to the European Union and to the EU member countries, including Croatia. Thank you. And now we are making a shift to a neighboring country, to our friend from Slovenia, Mr. Bojan Kekec. Please. Mr. Kekec, where are you? Please.
something is wrong.
Please, please.
Okay, it's all right, yeah. Thank you for the floor, the chair. Today we have the chance to learn from the past experience. Western Balkans has always been a part of Europe, but Europe did not pay much attention to it in the past. Only in the beginning of this millennium, when the enlargement process and regional cooperation started, did Europe finally begin with the program that will bring the necessary development and welfare to the region in the long run. The situation in the region is not perfect, especially regarding economic, demographic, developmental and other necessary structural reforms. Therefore, European Union should invest more in the economy, infrastructure, education and sustainable development of the states in the region, as it would bring stability and welfare to its population. We should use all available instruments to help with the reforms. Each last year bring heightened risk, as we will be facing increased presence of China and Russia in the region, which certainly does not fit with the interest of the European Union. Member states like Slovenia and Croatia that were historically part of former associations and states in this area can offer substantial help with the faster enlargement process, which is why we are looking forward to a European Union Western Balkan summits, which will take place in Zagreb in May. Now to the specific questions. Firstly, will the summit in May bring new and more flexible approaches to the enlargement process in the region? And secondly, how should we deal with the potentially increased presence of Russia and China in the region? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bojan. Would like to take the question, Tonino.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the way how you are thinking about the problems. Of course, a first encouraging signs. I think it's absolutely important to underline and to remind everybody that new methodology, and you ask about how new methodology can be flexible and comprehensive. A new methodology is set in Commission only 3 months after European Council, where 2 Western Balkans countries have been denied to start negotiations. Only 3 months. What does it mean? For me, it's in a way a hard evidence that European Union or Commission institutions still can react on the situation, on a possible crisis situation when is needed. And, of course, prerequisite is a political will. Where is a will, there is a way, there is a path. So it's good to know that European institutions can deliver when it's needed. So I do believe that during the Zagreb summit, which will be held in 2 months from now, we'll be also witnessing an effort and result regarding European perspective to not only two Western Balkan countries which are about to start negotiations, but I would like to see a more comprehensive political project related to all 6 Western Balkans countries. And I'm a witness of the history, and I was in a way a participant of the one event which took place here in this very room, in this crystal hall of this hotel. 20 years ago, first Zagreb summit was held here. It took place here, late 2000, and it was absolutely historical event where for the first time all European Union leaders, then European Union, gathered together outside of the territory of the European Union, 15 member states in that moment. It's been 20 years since that, and 17 years since Thessaloniki summit, where European perspective for the Western Balkans country was clearly granted. Now we got a chance to reinvigorate, to re-energize that type of division for the years to come. For me, it's absolutely important that we keep European Union an open project, because it started, as I said during my first intervention, started as a, of course, a union of the community of the six, but it must remain open for the newcomers. Of course, we need to set certain rules, and I'm glad that new methodology proposed in such a shape and form, in a way, is upgraded methodology. I said that it's good to see structured by the clusters, 6 clusters, but I would not like to see clustering of the member states regarding enlargement process. I would like to see more unity in the Council about this very important process, because European Union perspective as such is heavily depending what we are doing, not in the Zagreb summit in May, but what we are doing in the next 4 or 5 years, and how we can be able to upgrade our resilience, not only on the Western Balkans, but within European Union. If not, as you mentioned, there's some other players outside of European Union with completely different political agenda will fill the gap. And you know, it's my favorite saying in that sense that nature and politics, they don't like vacuum. Always someone else jump in and fill the gap. I won't believe that European Union will not create such an uncomfortable situation, first of all, on the Western Balkans, and leave a terrain and the space for some outside European Union players which got completely different geopolitical interest and agenda.
Thank you, Tonino. And now it's a turn of Mr. Hajdukovic. It was a technical problem, so now it's your turn. Thank you, Domagoj.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, dear colleagues, one of the benefits of being here in Zagreb is being exposed to our beautiful language, so allow me to saturate you even more with it, so I will speak in Croatian. Dakle, dragi kolege, prije svega...
Dear colleagues, first of all, I have to tell you that I'm pleased that we have a strong political consensus when it comes to the Western Balkans. Economy, security, and political interest of the EU is Western Balkans. Western Balkans is cultural, in a cultural terms, but also in all other ways, part of the European Union. And without Western Balkans, the European Union cannot function as a whole. There are numerous security reasons. Why is it important that this part of Europe is part of the EU? The EU is a peace project, a coexistence project, prosperity project, should be focused on this region where, for instance, the World War I was launched. So it is a very dangerous spot, and it is kind of a ticking bomb, and if we don't have a clear European perspective, we won't be able to be resistant to other influences of the forces outside of the European Union. So I hope that European perspective is existing, is here. We can debate about what are the processes, what are the methods candidate countries should go through. But I have to tell you that I was extremely disappointed when North Macedonia and Albania weren't given the date for the accession negotiations from the perspective of Macedonia. So a real trauma emerged. They even changed the name of the country. It is a highly delicate and sensitive question of national identity. So this demonstrates what kind of enthusiasm Macedonian citizens have. We have to make this possible for them and enable this. This is our responsibility towards this region and towards the European Union.
Hajdukovic now.
Thank you, Mr. Hajdukovic, for this appeal. I believe that Mr. Pizzala wants the floor to reinforce those words. Yes, you're absolutely right. Irrespective of the political differences that exist among the parliamentary parties in Croatia, we do have a common interest. and we can extend full political support to all the Western Balkan countries which want to accede the EU. I would like to add another very clear fact which illustrates the political capacity of some of the countries which want to join. You mentioned the example of Northern Macedonia. I don't know whether Harry Lokwenitz is still here. He was the first speaker. I would like to remind all of you that the Prespan Agreement, which was struck after 3 decades and annulled all the differences between Greece and Northern Macedonia, is the agreement that was struck by 2 governments with a lot of support. However, those negotiations were autonomous. The 2 governments were in charge of them independently, and which speaks of their ability to deal with all the problems, even the most difficult ones. We are not talking about some countries which lack a lot to launch negotiations. Those are countries with their issues and problems of transition, which is similar to all the problems that all the countries had in the 90s when they came knocking on the EU doors. The Northern Macedonia, Albania, and all the other countries in the region deserve a chance in the political process, which will benefit them and the European project alike, because we face the competition of others who don't have the same values as the EU, but still have deeply penetrated our political space. Thank you, Mr. Pizzula.
Belgium, Mark Demesmaker.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, for me, the first time in the region was 27, 28 years ago, when I visited this region as a journalist back then, reporting, doing a challenging job of reporting on the terrible war which was going on. So I am very much convinced of the fact that we cannot underestimate the responsibility that the EU has to consolidating peace, to work on stability, to ensure stability in this region, for reconciliation. The EU, for me, is also a peace project. It's in our strategic interest, but the EU is also a peace project. We have indeed been a partner in brokering peace in Ireland, also in the 90s. We have literally built bridges there. So I strongly believe in the role we should play. So we have to show ourselves a reliable partner as well. When conditions are met, negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania should start when conditions are met, knowing that this is just the start of probably a very long process. This is indeed a matter of credibility, but there is also another problem with credibility. I would like to ask you attention for that. It is the credibility for our own citizens. Don't underestimate the enlargement fatigue with our citizens. Don't ignore their concerns for this never-ending drift for enlargement, knowing that they also know the challenges of to digest the problems we've had to digest the former enlargements. So they have to be ensured that the reforms are real, that they are genuine, that they are irreversible. And there we have a lack of credibility as well, because people point to other examples. They point, for instance, to Turkey. Turkey that has received important pre-accession funds as well. We have had negotiations, and I've been an MEP as well, and each year the Commission came with the progress report. It's called progress report, but in fact they were regression reports, because in many areas the situation didn't show any progress, it showed regression. So I agree also with my Dutch colleague Sven Koopman when he says conditions have to be met, and I would say more, when there is no progress and when it shows regression, the process should be stopped. And I don't know whether this is part of the new methodology as well, because I welcome this new methodology and assessment methodology, but it should be clear. And I don't doubt the good faith and the goodwill of our good friends in North Macedonia and Albania, on the contrary. And then a last point, I would like to compliment on our friend Mr. Fischer from the Czech Republic on his remarks on the recognition of Kosovo. When we really are serious about engaging with this region, I think it's high time that all member states of the European Union recognize Kosovo, also the 5 member states who haven't done so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Before switching to Nathalie Loiseau, to be honest, I have never been criticizing Mr. Macron for having made the decision last year, because I was convinced at the outset that he had nothing against North Macedonia and Albania starting the negotiation process, but that he wanted to send a clear signal that something had to be revised when it comes to the technique of the negotiations. I think we have a consensus that we need a new way of negotiating. This is the only way to make the whole thing acceptable to all the member states. So I do not doubt that we will have a decision when it comes to open the negotiations, but we need a new, much more transparent and acceptable process for the countries which want to join the European Union. Now we're switching to a lady who had a very important contribution to reshaping the way of the way to see the negotiating process. Nathalie Loiseau from France, being a member of the European Parliament. Nathalie, allez-y, je vous en prie.
Merci beaucoup. Merci pour vos mots, cher Miro.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to start with something simple, and that is that the Western Balkan countries are European countries. And in my language, we shouldn't be talking about expansion, but unification, or reunification rather, because at the moment when we're talking about all this, we also have to see what the EU is going through, and there are 3 traumatic events at stake. First, Brexit. How can we talk about enlargement when we are actually being, but when we are shrinking? The second trauma is Turkey. And when we say this week, it resonates even louder because Turkey is actually distancing itself from the EU values. And the third trauma is the growth of extreme right wing all over Europe. The liberal democracies actually mean that those people don't believe in democracy, and that they are also distancing themselves from the basic EU values. We cannot ignore that fact, and our public opinion actually acknowledges what is going on. Our public opinion is divided when it comes to enlargement, especially in some parts of the EU. And the trust has to be regained, both among the EU member candidates, citizens, and all of us who have been elected by our citizens. We have to understand what our obligation is. We indeed needed new methodologies, and the methodology that the European Commission has provided is basically about political responsibility. The European officials and leaders basically are given new responsibilities. For too long, we have given that responsibility to the European Commission, and all those who were supposed to be responsible did not even bother to check what the Commission is doing. We should assume our part of responsibility before we start pointing fingers and accusing the Commission for non-action. We have to be progressive In response to the previous speaker, I would like to say that the new methodology takes all that into account. Whenever there's a stalling in the negotiations, that is also taken into account. And even more positive is the fact that the rule of law is a constant value. Europe cannot run in two gears. We shouldn't close the eye to the rule of law in a candidate country. There is just one road to follow, and we all have to follow it. The first step on that road is adopting this new methodology. We have to reform the European Union. We want to receive friends, and you cannot receive friends in an untidy house. Our house, our European house, is not tidy. A conference on the future of Europe is very important in that regard, and I would like the candidate countries to attend such a conference on the future of Europe.
Of course, I agree with you that we are facing with a number of traumas, and you said completely correctly that we are now talking about post-Brexit Europe, because Brexit, it's not an ordinary political problem, it's the problem, yes. And it's one side thoughts. The Brexit and enlargement state of play, for me, is a strong indication that it's not easy to enter European Union today, but it's not easy to leave the European Union either. So what I would like to add that of course, it's very important to see and try to foresee what kind of European Union will welcome one day new member states when they arrive in the future. It's absolutely important to find out and work on that. But I think that it's taking into account the importance of what you just have said. I think that can go in parallel. So new expansion or enlargement of European Union can go together, hand in hand, with internal reforming of European Union, and new ideas how European Union should function in the first half of the 21st century. I don't think it opposes one another. Yes, our colleague from Belgium mentioned enlargement fatigue, and we all know what does it really mean, but I think it's even more dangerous to create some kind of reform fatigue among the candidate countries. An example of North Macedonia is a clear evidence that they countries got enough capacity to resolve even long outstanding problems if they are motivated, well, because there it's their best interest in to do so, and we need to encourage them to do so, of course, and we need to consider once again where we are now. And two-speed Europe. I think there is no need to be afraid of two-speed Europe, because we already got two-speed Europe at least, because part of the countries, they are members of the Eurozone, they are not all in the Eurozone, and we also got Schengen, which is also a club within the European Union. But it's a natural development within the Union. So, of course, let's concentrate on how to enhance European Union in all areas, including, of course, rising hope among the candidate countries to create themselves and reform themselves in a better sense.
Thank you, Jelena.
Bon, je voudrais seulement remercier Madame Loiseau pour ses propos.
Thank you, Mrs. Loiseau, for her words of encouragement. I believe that we all agree that the Commission cannot be the sole body in charge of taking all decisions that actually should depend on us who have been elected by the citizens. So I believe that in the future, the European Parliament should insist amongst ourselves, amongst all of our groups, political groups, we should launch this new methodology and help it function. We have to see whether it suits all of us, all of our wishes. But this is not the most important thing. This is not the reason to give this very important task to somebody else. There's this BIS project which we have given to somebody else to be responsible for. I would like to congratulate you in France for having taken a decision and given us a shock, if you will. For having watched over the Balkans. If you hadn't done that in the way you did, we would have never been in a position to emphasize all of our former efforts, all of the dangers that we face, like populism and radicalism, and another big threat, why shouldn't we mention that? And that is the lack of reforms that were supposed to be implemented by Turkey, and they are not implemented. Thank you.
I suggest that we form two groups of questions. The first one consisting of 3 questions, and the second one of 4 questions. Now we would start with the first question of the first group, Anastasios Hatzivassiliou from Greece.
Thank you, dear Miriam. Thank you for your wonderful hospitality and for your kind support earlier today. Before talking about the Balkans, allow me to brief you about what happened in Greece a couple of minutes ago. The EU leaders, along with the prime ministers of Croatia and Greece, made a statement, and they all underlined the fact that Greek borders are European borders. President Michel stressed that they support us in this asymmetric threat, and Ms. von der Leyen described Greece as the European Union's shield. We believe it's high time for practical action, and we are confident that our EU partners will stand by us in these difficult times, and we are grateful for that. Now about the Western Balkans. The enlargement in the area should be considered as a geopolitical investment. We remain committed to the fair conditionality of the enlargement procedure and the principle of own merits. But the stake is high, and Europe is obliged to proceed taking into consideration the long-term challenges of stability of the Union. No room should be left for third parties destabilizing influences in the region. As regards our 2 neighboring states, Greece has a very consistent position. We support the accession negotiations as long as the core European values are respected. I would like to insist particularly on the fact that Tirana must actively respect Greek minority rights, and our friends in Skopje should prove their commitment to the good neighbourly relations. But generally, we have to be more precise. The European Union has to agree upon a specific process with deadlines and concrete results. What are your thoughts on that? Wouldn't we be more credible if we had such a plan, sending a clear message to all the Western Balkan states that we are ready to praise those who insist in doing the reforms? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now our friend from Estonia, Esma.
Thank you, Chair. My question goes to Mrs. Ruiz Calavera. You were talking about improving methodology, new approach. My question is, are the European Union criteria still the solid rock we can build the future of European Union? Because world changes every day. Countries change even their constitution. Are those criteria still adequate? You meet the challenge every day in your work. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the last question of the first group of questions, our friend from Romania, Radu Mihai Mihail.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Pour commencer, je voudrais saluer le...
Let me start with the position regarding enlargement and integration and the reunification, as Mrs. Loiseau has called it. My impression is that we have to continue cooperating with the states of the Western Balkans. And enlargement should always be on the agenda. I would like to say that a lot of emphasis should be given to the process of integration. We also have to have a credible perspective of enlargement, and the main guarantee of enlargement should be internal reforms and respect for EU values. The progress that was seen in Romania before and after concerns the rule of law and the judiciary. Various factors in the state, at the government level, in the civilian society, had to transform, and they brought around the table all of Romania. And we actually questioned our entire system, and now we have the new leader of the European Advocacy Group from Romania. Obviously, we have to take into account the security of Europe, and Bulgaria and Romania are witnesses to that. The enlargement of the European Union also concern Moldova. We can't go against the time. How do you see the skepticism among the EU states? Which EU state is the most skeptical when it comes to the enlargement process?
Thank you very much, and I would like to specifically remercier Madame Loiseau parce qu'elle a expliqué la proposition de la Commission mieux que je pourrais le faire. I think it's very important that we mention, I mean, the proposal on the revision of the enlargement really address all the concerns that I've heard today. And I think they really address them in a way that, of course, address those concerns that the citizens have. And that's why it's important that all of you and your governments approach our citizens to give them guarantees that their concerns are going to be addressed. And there are threefold the concerns. Certainly, we want to see that the enlargement methodology helps the countries to transform their societies, and to transform societies not in second-hand citizens, but in first-hand citizens that can participate in the European Union with full respect for their values, but that can as well make the European Union stronger. And for that, it's clear that we want to be much more credible, but credibility goes both ways. Credibility from us to them, we deliver every time they progress, but from them to us to really make concrete progress that is tangible and that is not just ticking boxes on laws adopted, but really implemented and creating real transformation. The second thing, we have to be clearly more predictable. So we have to say clearly what are the conditions, and when they meet these conditions, we have to deliver in the next steps in the process. And that's what we're asking right now for North Macedonia and for Albania. And when they don't deliver on what the conditions we have put, we certainly have to make sure that there are consequences for it. And those consequences can be very broad, can be from rediscussing the chapters we have already rediscussed, can be from very dramatic, stopping the negotiations, can be intermediate, withdrawing economic or financial or political support. We have a wide capacity to modulate our response, but we need, and that's also very clear, the fundamental issue is the Commission don't decide. The Commission just propose to our member states. And we need the leadership, and leadership both ways again. Leadership of our member states, and that's very clearly requested in this paper as well. We need our member state to be at the forefront. This is a political process. This is not a technical process. The technicalities, we do it in the Commission. But it's a political process. But as well from the leaders of this region, that shouldn't hide behind that this is a technical process. should invest the political capital that is necessary to make those transformations. Because what is clear is that neither the Commission nor our member states are going to accept any shortcuts to respecting the criteria of the European Union. And that I would like to respond to our member of the Parliament of Estonia. You know, this criteria, I think, is not only valid, it's more valid than ever. I mean, the criteria that was defined in Copenhagen in the Madrid Conventions on respecting the fundamental values of the European Union, which is respecting democracy, respecting fundamental rights, respecting, making sure that you have public administration that can provide the public goods that they need to your citizens, making sure your economies are equipped to resist the pressure on competition in a market, and certainly making sure that your laws, that you have the capacity to implement the EU acquis and to make the EU stronger. And I think those values and those criteria are not only very important for the European Union candidates, but are very important for the European Union as a whole. And as you see, the new Commission is going to look across the board now in what is the state of play of the rule of law in the EU as a whole as well. We are certainly not having two ways of looking. We are going to do the same analysis inside the European Union of the analysis we're asking the candidate countries to do. And I think last but not least, it is extremely important that we have this constant engagement with you as of course, representatives of our citizens and of all the political visions of the European Union, with your governments and with the EU institutions. Because the effort that we need to put all together to help the countries, and the countries have to advance, really requires this dialogue, constant dialogue, that creates trust and confidence in the system. And I think that's probably the most important thing we have to restore, trust and confidence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Genoveva. And now we are moving to the last group of questions. And the first question goes to Austria, Österreich, unser Freund Wolfgang Gerstl. Bitte schön.
Vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me start by thanking you and the Croatian Chair for putting this topic on the agenda. Microphone, please. The microphone seems to have been turned off. It's been a long-standing wish of Austria to support the Western Balkan in its integration in the European Union, and it has been mentioned before that this has been a long-standing commitment of ours that the Western Balkans have to be part of Europe. In these recent years, especially in the years from 2000 to 2010, there has been a lot of euphoria in the region. Also, many Western European countries have been supporting this process very much. But in the last 5 to 7 years, maybe, other powers seem to have increased their influence, almost a dramatic increase in influence in these countries. Russia has been mentioned, Saudi Arabia or Turkey maybe have not yet been mentioned, and other donors or investors that do not always act in the best interest of Europe. And therefore, I think it has to be very clear, and we have to have a very strong political will in supporting what our colleague has said. We need to invest this European capital, a political capital, when it comes to completing the enlargement in the Western Balkan countries. It's about Europe's credibility, and it goes without saying for me that candidate countries that comply with conditions and criteria, just in case there are any doubts, need to be supported. Hope needs to be given to them. We have to support their populations, because many people have lost their belief in the European Union, and it's up to us, the current presidency and the following presidency, to re-establish this trust and confidence in the European Union. Many thanks.
To Poland again, Agnieszka Pomaska.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will more comment than have a question. Comment on rule of law. that, of course, must be respected, but I have this feeling that Poland, without mentioning the name of Poland, was mentioned many times here today. And I have to say that, unfortunately, nothing lasts forever, including rule of law. And Poland is an example. I represent opposition party in Poland, where there is a problem with rule of law, as you know, and my colleague from the Netherlands mentioned, I guess, Poland in this case, and it is true. But I have to say that if we were not in the European Union, the situation in Polish judiciary would be much more difficult. And thanks to the EU membership and thanks to the pressure that is from the European side is very helpful, and nothing lasts forever, and I can promise that also the situation and Poland as a troubled country will not last forever, and it will change sooner or later. But nonetheless, there are not many issues in Poland that we have and we find compromise in Poland, but the EU enlargement policy is an exception, and it is the most powerful tool that the EU has to encourage reforms and support long-term political stability, including good neighborly relations. And no matter who rules in Poland, I can assure you that you, non-EU member countries, yet will have our support. Just don't fully follow the Polish example, especially if we talk about rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Agnieszka. And there's still two remaining questions. The first one, Ioannis Amanatidis from Hellas.
Hellas, yes, this is correct word, I think. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the EU has made decisive steps with regards to the political and economic stability of the Balkans. Most important of which remains its enlargement process, with most impressive results for all Balkan states that are proud members of the EU. I underlined some words from the key note speakers. Enlargement means protection, as you said, as you mentioned. Enlargement means that there will not be the black hole in the map of Europe. But I wonder security, of course. Business security. But I have a question. I wonder this. I hear that the PRESPA agreement is only an agreement between two governments. My opinion is this agreement has many results for the Balkans area, and we could not be able to discuss the Western enlargement now if there will not be the agreement of PRESPA. Why, in your place of your speech, in your speech, there is no word about the PRESPA agreement? This is my order as a order. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now the last question, ultima domanda, goes to our friends from Italy. Please, Marta Grande.
Is it working? Yes. So thank you. I just wanted to, just give you a thought, and it's not really an answer. It's much more like a thought on what we have been saying today, and also the past experience that we have from the Italian side. We all agree on the fact that the Balkans are obviously part of the European Union, just like understanding that potential new tensions might arise in this part of the world. And that if the European Union is not there, somebody else might be there. I mean, we are all clear on that, and I think it's simple and evident to everybody. We, as the Chamber of Deputies of the Italian Parliament, have been 6 times in the Balkans in the past, in less than 2 years. And that's because we are very much committed to the political side of the issue. Today we had the chance to talk also with those that work much more on the technicalities, which are obviously the overall work that is behind our job, which is representing people. And my thought that I wanted to share, and maybe you can comment on, is exactly this one. I guess that at this point in time, what we all should be doing here in this context, I mean, since we are all parliamentarians, is actually to work much more on the political side of the agenda. That is to strengthen the relations between our parliaments and the parliament in the Balkans and be able to cooperate together to work on specific issues. All the technicalities are obviously taken in charge by the European Commission, and there are people that know much more than me all the difficult chapters that have been opening and that will be opening with many specific countries. But I guess, and that's my message to everybody, that we should all start working together in order to make them feel wanted within the European Union, try to help them believe in what we have been building over the years, especially a country like funding countries should be on the forefront of this, let's say, political approach that, from my point of view, we should work on. So that's just a thought to give to the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And dear colleagues, your concluding remarks, please. Who's the first one? Jelena? Oh, Genoveva, the Commission. Who's the first one?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I think I can conclude on the basis of Mrs. Grande's remark, which I think they are very pertinent. It's clear that there's an aspect of the process which is technical, and we're very happy to carry it over. And that technical aspect, the parliaments of the region are very important. The European integration committees in the parliaments to really work with us to make sure that all the laws and all the reforms are going. But there's an aspect which is more political, and that political aspect is, of course, the responsibility of the representatives in the parliament, of the EU member states governments, and of the leaders of the region. And I think in particular the parliaments, and we work a lot with the European Parliament in this respect, you can do a lot to make the region feel accepted and feel encouraged, but as well to do a lot to make them understand what it is to be part of the European Union. And in that respect, I mean, your role in overcoming, the very polarized environments that we sometimes find, to really talk about politics should happen inside the parliaments and not outside the parliaments, and that the politics should come to bring, what is the greatest good for the countries in the region, for the people of the region. Certainly, it's something which I would like to see more, and that we look very much forward to working with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Jelena?
Right, thank you, Chairman. And I would like to thank you for really encouraging remarks that I have heard here. Together with my colleague Tonino Pizzula, we have negotiated this resolution in European Parliament right after the non-decision on opening negotiation with North Macedonia and Albania. And I must assure you the Prespa agreement is present there as all the other agreements, and we have been reassured by all position and opposition parties in North Macedonia that this will not be questioned in the future, so rest assured that this is not an issue anymore. My last remarks would be, I would like to welcome also delegations from Bosnia and Herzegovina and North Macedonia that are here, and I would love in the future their voice to be heard more in these exchanges of the opinions. Also, I welcome the proposal of my colleague, Madame Loiseau, that in a conference on future of Europe that our Commissioner and Vice President, Madame Šuica, is organizing, Western Balkan agenda should be highly put and discussed, because there is no future without the whole European Union, and there is no future without stable and secure European Union. So, today we learned that we should listen to each other. This morning I spoke to my colleague who is a Polish, and I'm really encouraged by the Polish encouragement in that whatever is happening in Poland, it's much safer to be within European Union and to follow the rule of law. And we are really insisting on the rule of law because rule of law is necessary for all the citizens. European Union is not the same if everybody is not protected, and that this is something, conditionality that no one will allow not to be respected. So thank you so much, and I hope that going back to your respective countries, you will have a feeling that it's not now when you are in the largest frontier country, Croatia, that going back to the North country, Estonia or Poland, and facing all the troubles that you are having, you learn a bit more about others. Because European Union is not only about ourselves, European Union is knowing more about our family. Thank you.
Thank you, Jelena, and now finally, Tonino, please.
Thank you, Miro, and thank you for chairing this absolutely interesting and important panel. I would like just to say that this panel is for sure about to be finished in a couple of the minutes, but I do hope the process we are debating last 2 hours will go on. I would like to end trying to connect two pictures in a way. Of course, Madame Grande inspired me when you said, of course, there's the first of all a political will, which should determine the whole process we are talking about. Just one comparison. 15 years ago, when Big Bang enlargement took place, the European Union embraced not 1, 2, 3, but 10 new member states. Do you know how the European Union extended the territory in that moment? For 1/3. And large number of population, inhabitants, for 20%. But do you know how it enlarged its economy? Then we're talking about 15 member states. Only 4%. Only 4%. Now we are talking about 6 Western Balkan countries. And do you know what Western Balkan countries' economies combined are? 3% of European Union 27 GDP. So there's a clear evidence. If there is a political will, there is a way. And politics is crucial in this situation. So I think we need to foster, we need to push process we are talking about, not because of necessity to prove that if diplomacy or administration are effective, because when one country is entering the European Union, it's not a case, it's not a result of the good diplomacy. It should be overall comprehensive process which embrace not only political elite, but trade unions, academia, citizens, non-governmental organizations, you can name it. So what I want to say that we need to give a chance to Western Balkans 6 and maybe some other countries in our vicinity, in the eastern and the southern of European Union one day, but I think we needed to do it because of the sake of the project. It started more than 60 years ago, and you know 6 countries in that period of time called themselves European Economic Community, and they agreed to put under the control steel and coal, capital elements important to wage wars. And we need to answer ourselves, what is today steel and coal? What we need to underline as a backbone, as a core of the, I think, unprecedented important project in the entire history of European continent, European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Tonino, for these concluding remarks. Also thank you to you, Jelena, and to Genoveva. I think that our panelists need an applause. They deserve an applause. We have had an interesting debate. We're closing the debate. We're closing our session. We will have a dinner tonight at 7:15. So the buses are leaving at 7:45. And please put on your ties because we're going to have a family photo. We have to be handsome, well-dressed for tonight's dinner. Thank you so much and see you tonight. So 7:45, the buses are leaving at 7:45 and the dinner is 8:15.